This is the Italian Citizenship Podcast, hosted by Marco Permunian and Rafael Di Furia. Hello there, and welcome to another edition of the Italian Citizenship Podcast, presented by Italian Citizenship Assistance.com. Of course, we are back at it again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I am doing great, thank you for asking. And today we wanted to get into the topic of an expansion of the services being offered by Italian Citizenship Assistance.com and get into how you have been expanding your translation team. So Marco, instead of my introducing this much more, I'll let you get into this and talk about what you've been doing behind the scenes to help more and more individuals who are looking to get Italian citizenship.
Given the increasing number of people requesting translations only, translations for their citizenship documents, we decided to have a dedicated team who assists people who only need translations. In other words, of course, we assist people who have to go through the whole citizenship process. That's a specialty. We take care from the process from A to Z. But there are a number of people who have decided to go through the process on their own and basically find themselves in a situation where they only need the translations of their documents. And my dedicated team now will help these people to translate their documents.
It's wonderful that ICA has the ability to help people who are going through both. I mean, you've always been offering these anyway, but that you've brought more people onto your team and helped build that out a little bit more into its own specific developed team just on its own. But I guess one of the most important questions would be, what are the translations that you are offering and how do they differ than maybe other translations that might be used by other people in other situations? And what sets your team apart in the services that you offer?
So there are several types of translations that you might need when going through a citizenship process. And I think we have to differentiate between people going through a consulate, so applying for citizenship through a consulate, versus people who want to pursue citizenship through the courts in Italy, or people who want to file their application in an Italian municipality. And of course, my team of translators is not only made of professional translators, but people who actually know the ins and out of the citizenship process. So not only they know how to translate documents, but also they know the process. And they know not only how to translate documents, but also if the documents that are being presented are good enough for the process, or if they're in the wrong format, or maybe if they notice discrepancies in the documents that would need to be amended before these documents are used for the citizenship process. I'm thinking, for example, if when my team notices that the name of the ancestor is inconsistent throughout the documents, or maybe the dates are completely messed up on the documents, so these documents need to be revised and amended before they can be translated and used for the citizenship process. But going back to your question, so people who apply for citizenship through a consulate, they will only need plain, regular, simple translations. So translations that can be done even through email. So we will be sent scanned copies of the documents, and we will provide translations to our clients via email, because all they have to do is print the translations. And when they go to the consulate, to their appointment, they will have to present their documents, the original documents, and the translations that we provided that they can, again, just print out, because the consulate will accept regular translations. However, there are some consulates that for some specific documents, they will require certified translations. It happens, for example, that some consulates require that the legal documents issued by a court, for example, a divorce decree, which is needed as part of the application process, requires a certified translation. In other words, if you are the applicant for citizenship and you were married and divorced, so you need to provide the consulate with your divorce decree, and that's a legal document provided by the court, the consulate will not accept a simple, regular translation. They will want the translation to be certified, which means that my team will have to have the original document in hand. So that will need to be mailed to us. And my team will have to certify the translation, and there are several ways of certifying the translation. The most common is to swear before a public notary in the US that the translation is faithful and accurate. And then the notary will certify the statement given by the translator. However, the notary stamp will have to be apostilled in order for the translation to be accepted. Now, there's a second way of getting the translation certified, which would be to certify them through an Italian court. And my team specifically tends to use the local court that we have in the town where our Italian office is located. So instead of rendering your statement before a public notary, you give your statement as a translator before the clerk of the court, which will certify that you have stated that the translation is faithful and accurate. So these are the two main ways of getting a translation certified. There is a third one, which is less common and less popular, which would be for a translator to state that the translation is faithful and accurate before an Italian public notary. That tends to be a more expensive option because normally the Italian notary fees are higher compared to the American notary fees.
That's really interesting. And so far you've mentioned about the applying at the consulate, but what about if you are applying through Italy directly? How would there be any differences there? Because you mentioned that you are able to handle these services through email, but what would be the extra steps necessary when going through Italy, or are there any extra steps that would be necessary directly in Italy?
Yes, there are extra steps, meaning that both when you're applying for citizenship through an Italian municipality or when you're pursuing citizenship through a 1948 case, you would have to have your translations certified, which means that we would have to obtain the original documents from the client and provide the clients with certified translations. So the courts in Italy and the municipalities will only accept certified translations, which means that the client would either have to get from us translation certified before a US public notary or an Italian clerk of the court or an Italian public notary. There is another option, which is again less common, which would be getting the translations certified by an Italian consulate. So in other words, when you're filing your application in court in Italy, or you're filing your application through an Italian municipality, you do need to have certified translations, which can also be obtained from an Italian consulate in the US. So the Italian consulate also offers this specific service where they will certify the translations that you provide to them. However, this service is not rendered by all of the Italian consulates in the US. Only certain consulates will do that because they're very busy with citizenship applications, and because there are alternatives to this specific option, sometimes they will say, no, we cannot help you with certifying translations. Or when they can, it will be an extremely slow process because you would have to provide the consulate with the original documents and the translations that you want them to certify, and they would have to send you back the translations, and this whole process will take a very long time. So when you are in need of certified translations, I think it's best to avoid the consulate route to get them.
And so far, we've talked a lot about the documents that have to be translated, but in many cases, if not all, the documents will require some sort of certification, whether it's an apostille or that it's a certified copy, XYZ. How do those get handled? Are those translated as well? Do they have to be translated? What's the process like in that case?
When you're submitting documents to apply for citizenship to an Italian court, so if you have a 1948 case, it's always advisable to also translate the apostille. You will have less problems. The same applies to the process at the Italian municipality. So if you're applying in court or through an Italian municipality, it's advisable to also have the apostilles translated because even if it's not well defined in Italian law, whether the apostilles also need to be translated, it's highly advisable in order not to have problems with the clerk of the court or the clerk of the municipality, to have the apostilles also translated into Italian.
Very interesting. And then also, just to quickly cover as well, what are some of the documents that would have to be translated for the process of getting Italian citizenship?
So when you're applying through a consulate, there are some documents that do not have to be translated, and it's always best to check the guidelines on the website of the Italian consulate before you file your application. But generally, the naturalization records pertaining to your Italian ancestor or the documents that prove that your ancestor was never naturalized do not have to be translated. Also, several consulates, they do not require that the birth certificates and marriage records or death certificates for the individuals that are not in your Italian line are translated. So while they do require, of course, that every single birth certificate, marriage record, and death certificate for the individuals in your Italian line is fully translated, some consulates allow for the birth and death certificates pertaining to the individuals that are not in the Italian line, so the people who are married to the individuals who are in the Italian line, to not be translated. And furthermore, some consulates will even accept photocopies of these documents, so they will no longer require these documents to be a certified copy. So this is regarding somebody who wants to apply for citizenship by descent through a consulate. But if you're applying for citizenship by descent through an Italian municipality or via the courts, so if you have a 1948 case, then all of the documents that you present to the municipality or to the court will have to be translated, so including the naturalization records, for example, of your ancestor who was born in Italy.
And just one other question also. Are there any other languages other than Italian that they'll accept documents in, or is Italian the only language that the Italian government will accept documents in? I ask only because sometimes you'll find in some countries that some consulates might accept documents in multiple languages, or from other countries at least, not Italian consulates. So is that an option there if you have another language other than documents that are in English, or how would that work?
So the rule is that every single document which is not in Italian will have to be translated, with the exceptions of the documents that I mentioned a moment ago. So all of the documents that are in English or other languages will have to be translated. So the consulate will accept only documents in Italian or documents that have been translated into Italian from another language, whether it's English or any other language, if your documents were issued in other countries different from Italy and the US, like Germany or France. We have some clients, for example, that had documents from South America because the ancestor emigrated to Argentina or Brazil or even to France. We have seen that a number of times. So those documents will evidently need to be translated from Spanish or Portuguese or French into Italian before it's possible to use them for your application.
Well, Marco, thank you so much for getting into all of these topics and for shedding light on this new expansion of your services that you are offering to help people of Italian descent get Italian citizenship. So, of course, if anybody is needing help to get Italian citizenship or just get the translations of their documents, how can they get in contact with you and your team?
People can contact us through our website, ItalianCitizenshipassistance.com, or give us a call. Our number is on our website.
Well, absolutely fantastic. And of course, if you're interested in more information like this about getting Italian citizenship and making Italy your home from a legal perspective, be sure that you are subscribed to this YouTube channel as well as the audio-only podcast. But of course, if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, that means you're also automatically subscribed to another project that Marco and I collaborate on called the Italian Real Estate Podcast, where we get into some of the practical aspects of purchasing a home in Italy, and as well as rentals and different locations in Italy that both Marco and I might advise to people to look at. So also, if you're interested in more information about life abroad, living abroad as a dual citizen expat, be sure to come over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rafael Di Furia, where I talk about these topics as well as getting into some of the nitty-gritty details of day-to-day life. Or you can find on YouTube and the audio podcasting platforms if you search for not your average globetrotter. But of course, thank you, Mr. Marco Permunian, for making yourself available for this episode of the Italian Citizenship Podcast, presented by ItalianCitizenshipAssistance.com. And of course, I'm Rafael Di Furia. Stay safe and healthy out there, and we will see you all next time. Later.
Thank you.